Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast, and I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Isabella Silverio of Guava Empowerment. Isabella, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Definitely super excited to have you on. And before we jumped into the interview, I wanted to read a little bit more about Isabella so you could hear about all the awesome things that she's doing. And Isabella is a Cuban-American and Miami native entrepreneur, leader, and Cuban Millionaria. Her passion lies in helping women think entrepreneurial in their careers and daily lives. She grew up believing anything is possible and has always helped others do the same. After being involved in over 10 plus technology global startups, she traveled to Cape Town, South Africa, where she helped disadvantaged entrepreneurs optimize and scale their businesses so that they can provide for their families. And during these experiences, Isabella learned the true tenacity and spirit of entrepreneurship. Isabella founded Guava Empowerment to create programs, tools, and courses to help women to fully embody their CEO. Isabella, it's great to have you on the show. Are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for introducing me.
No
is that
problem.
me?
Yeah, no, thank you for all the awesome things that you're doing. That's definitely you. So I wanted to kick everything off by rewinding the clock, hear a little bit more on how you got started, what I call your CEO story.
Yeah. So before I actually filed for my own company and business, which I was 21 years old at the time, a senior in college, getting my business administration degree, I was really on a track to really attracted to kind of like Silicon Valley startup community culture. I had a lot of like entrepreneur like crushes, like Mark Cuban and like Rihanna. And I'm like, wow, like there's a spotting innovation from a mile away. I guess that's kind of one of my talents now after 4 years of doing this. I can just spot how the world is changing and how entrepreneurship is like the solution for the changes. And but yeah, I guess my CEO story started. I can go back, I used to sell avocados and mangoes on Coral Way, Miami, Florida with a sign and just to have some cash. And then after that, I sold bracelets in high school, and I worked as a barista for a small business and for a family business. And I was like in that kind of structure, and I learned just how to, make connections and how to be professional and that stuff. And I guess it wasn't until I didn't really see a lot of opportunity for women like me in startup culture, because at the time, I don't know if you remember, but when like Uber was really under fire for how their company culture was very like parallel to like fraternity kind of stuff. And when I would vocalize about that, I would receive like backlash or like criticism. So I was like, man, can't deal with any of you guys. I'm going to try to do my own little social media consulting business, and believed in myself to do it. Still doing it 4 years later. We'll see what happens the next 4 years, I guess, or 40 years. It's a livelihood thing. Entrepreneurship is like a livelihood.
Yeah, I love that you use that word livelihood. It's so funny. I also have I got my parents to take me to MJ Design so I can sell bracelets and everything too. So I have that kinship in being able to kind of do that. But that's why I love that livelihood word. But it's so funny. Like I'll say this phrase often, and you kind of reminded me of it, where I say entrepreneurship equals hope. And I think a lot of times when you have the world as you see that it shouldn't be, there's something that may be not, correct. A lot of times creating those solutions is a way to do that. So I love that you've been able to do that in so many steps of your life and still are helping many people to do that as well.
Yeah, thank you. I love everything you just said. I'm like, I know you have more questions, but entrepreneurship is solving problems. And I've felt hopeless a few times, but I had to tell myself, like, you are not hopeless. There's opportunity out there, especially for others. You have to believe it's there for yourself too.
Yeah, absolutely. When you lean into that, that definitely is when you start to see that come to fruition. And so I wanted to drill down a little bit deeper, hear a little bit more about Guava Empowerment and all the awesome things you're doing to help support people.
Yeah, so Guava Empowerment started as a female-focused entrepreneurship business consulting firm. I don't like really using exact semantics because what matters to me is how can I make the client happy? What's their problem? It's one thing or the other. And just make them feel empowered, Guava Empowerment, to navigate all of the difficulties that come with being an entrepreneur, pressure from your customers or from your family or from your team. We can be very kind of guarded about, you know, like secretive about how we run our business because we just want to be correct all the time, I guess. And having a consultant is a very humbling process. And it really just has someone tell you like, hey, this isn't working the way that you are thinking it's working in your head. You're really putting yourself down a hole that's going to be harder to get out of. So big advocate for consulting. Any type of educational resources, you know, when you're teaching social media, I was teaching Instagram very early on. So I would teach women of all ages and backgrounds about hashtags and caption writing. And I would say like, it's like when you put a thing on Craigslist, you have to be very appealing and then you have to have the right pictures. And then if you make a lot of parallels, people really can, that's how you teach people. And business is always changing too. So I don't think there's like one right answer. I think it's very client to client. And I try to just make them happy and do the best I can. And also give opportunities away, you know, to others. And if that's within my team or just meeting another business owner, we just talked about livelihood and huge thing about being a business owner. And I was very in the startup community. It's about respect, right? Like you can't just assume someone's going to help you on Instagram because they're good at it, because that's their livelihood. Like it was mine. And you have to respect every business owner, any tiny startup, because you never know who's going to emerge. And if you're kind of like operating under of like, I already know what I'm doing, or like they just started and whatever that, no one likes that person. So I think respect is so huge in business, and social media is a tool. That's it. It's just a tool. We have our feelings in it all the time, but I try to just keep that objectivity.
Yeah, that's absolutely huge. I appreciate you, sharing that and helping, so many, women entrepreneurs, out, especially, in that environment, because I think it's so important to, I always often will talk about the marathon mindset and understanding that it is a long-term building of relationships, planting seeds. And sometimes when you do have that mentality that you kind of talked about earlier, where you are kind of putting somebody else down because they're not X, Y, and Z, then you never know where that person is going to be or who that person might potentially know. So it's so important to kind of have a really good environment and really good kind of approach and respect to people. So because that's just how we would want to be treated. And I think it's something we need to remind ourselves of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Nice. And so I wanted to drill down a little bit more and hear a little bit more on what I call your secret sauce. And this could be for yourself personally or the business or a combination of both. But what do you feel kind of sets you apart and makes you unique?
So I think I'm really good at making people feel good. I don't know if it's in my bio, it's you mentioned I grew up to believe that anything was possible. If my story is very much painful and kind of like my mother instilled a lot of confidence in me. She believed in me a lot. And so I was raised to kind of be liberated and be like that dreamer. And so it's very easy for me to network, I'm a great networker. I can just get right to the bottom of what someone's passion is and give them some type of like, oh, well, this is kind of booming right now. Why don't you implement that? And then boom, their face just lights up. They feel like, oh, and my next step is revealed. Like, who are you? And I'm like, Isabella.
There you go.
I read the business news every day. I love the trends, policy changes, technology. Um, you know, everything affects the next thing, and you kind of need to know where in the movie Finding Nemo, where there's all those currents, which current you want to go into. And you don't have to enter a current right now. You can wait, and you should actually scan the environment and do your research. Otherwise, you're going to be going in and replicating other people, and you're not going to have that leg up because you didn't take that initiative and figure out like, okay, like what's going on in the world, what's happening today, like raw materials are very scarce, and so prices of building houses are going up, and that can tell you something about where interest rates are going to go. And yeah, it's fun to make those connections in my head. So I guess that's my secret sauce, just being an entrepreneur and being having like those melt away lack of confidence, because anyone could be an entrepreneur. Like Elon Musk doesn't even have any social skills, and he's like Elon Musk, and so anyone could fit in. You just gotta know who your customer is. That's huge. Know who your customer is. I know who my customer is really well, and I guess that's another secret sauce maybe, but yeah, I don't know. That answered the question fully.
It definitely did answer the question, because to me, what I hear is like kind of being able to see the forest for the trees. And I think so many times it seems like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're able to kind of see how a lot of times I'll say innovation happens not necessarily because one thing's innovative, but because you can see those dominant, you can see how they're interconnected. You can see how if this happens, so and so will happen. If A happens, B will happen, or C or D or Z, whatever it might be. And a lot of times we get so stuck into silos thinking, okay, this is my industry. I don't need to know about this other industry. But seeing how all those things are intertwined and connected, in addition to having that confidence that you spoke about, really allows you to not only see those things, but I think the confidence comes in acting upon those things, because sometimes we can see things, but we're not sure because we think we're the only one that sees it. So we're not confident in taking those actions. Being able to couple those things is really what takes things to another level, it sounds like.
Yeah. And I really struggled with like stepping into being that person, because I was very quickly surrounded by a lot of business experts and immediately put myself in a hierarchical beginner place. And, I see that no one really knows what they're doing. And it's also not just an industry, right? Like you have to know that your industry operates within a sector, and that sector is like correlated to other sectors. And if you want to go between online business course creation and real estate, you can. And then most likely, especially with my kind of customer base, my girls are interested in doing everything. They want to have the business and the e-commerce and the live events and the press and the real estate mogul. Like they want it all. We all want it all. I read somewhere that you should write down everything you want to accomplish in your life, and then you need to put it in an order of events, because it's just no way it's not going to happen unless you plan it out that way. And I think in the age that we're moving into, with more of a content is being pushed out, personal brands, celebrity entrepreneurs is even more of a thing. It's like a game of Hungry Hippo, kind of like just trying to mine for audience members. And so you have to be yourself and be really authentic when you're executing on that strategy or steps.
Yeah, people, I mean, and I think people really connect to that. I say so many times we forget about that human aspect of business, but like by being authentic, being yourself, I think it allows people to connect with you. And I think that what you said, resonated with me well, because I think so many times, again, we think of the world as being in silos, but as we start to see that not only do we have multiple interests and we're Renaissance men and women and we want to do many things, those things are starting to blur, because you have a successful real estate business. That's going to help you out when you want to launch your restaurant. Because you launch your restaurant, that's going to help you out when you launch that e-commerce brand. And all those things are intertwined, and we're starting to see that more and more. But it's not so much, doing all those things at the same time, as you said, is being able to kind of prioritize those things and say, I'm going to focus on this first. That's going to hit over this domino, that domino. And then you start to see those, that awesomeness come from there.
Yeah. And now that you say that, you know what I think is really holding people back right now, like today, in being able to make those jumps, is that they don't want to use the leverage that they created themselves. I don't know if it's maybe me, or I'm just like, but because I did that, like what am I trying to say? Every business is leverage, and the best business owners know how to leverage within their, to their goals and within their like moral value system. And it's so weird that we won't be like, oh, like I had a successful social media agency, but like it's not really a big thing now that I do like my consulting thing. It's like, of course it is. What are you talking about? Don't be humble. Don't save it for the memoir. Put it out there right now. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's definitely huge because people don't realize like I'm a big believer in like success breeds success. So when you are able to reach a certain goal, to be able to showcase that and say that, even if it's something that might quote unquote look like it's not related, to be able to regularly execute on a regular basis allows you that kind of leverage or that respect and knowing that you can potentially do that again. So it's something that you do definitely have to lean into.
Yeah. Totally.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and I wanted to ask you for what I call a CEO hack. So this could be like an app, a book, or a habit that you have, but what's something that makes you more effective and efficient?
I should have thought more about this before we jumped on.
No worries.
Um, I'm a big like features person. I think if you're using like I love Google, right? So I've been trying to use all of Google's features, and something I'm loving right now is Google Keep. We
Mhm.
actually don't even have any project management anymore. We just have Google Keep, and it's really easy. And even with like Slack, using the features within Slack so you don't have to add anything on, and saving money that way. And even Instagram's new features. I mean, that's like always a popular topic, but I think give yourself a few days to audit the way that you're kind of operating in a technology aspect. Cause there's this book called Digital Minimalism, and it's very minimalism. I just took away that you kind of need to scan through, and that's going to help you as a CEO. I think things are meant to like fall away, especially with just so many, like it moves so fast that we can get really anxious about letting things go. I think it's just better to let it go so that way you can find the features and tools that are literally created for you to do better and perform better.
That makes so much sense, and you had mentioned Mark Cuban earlier, and it kind of reminded me of him as well too, because I think so many times I think in his book he talked about how he read the manual of all the electronics when he worked at an electronics store because nobody ever did that, and to me that kind of resonated with what you were just saying because to actually okay, oh, I use this tool, but to really know what the features are and delve down deeper into them to understand them, and then understand that not all the features are necessarily going to work for you. Some of them are, some of them aren't, and be okay with kind of letting go of those things. That's really in how you kind of lean into that success.
Yeah, I don't have any like morning routine things. I'm bad with that stuff. I'm bad with like, I have anxiety. So I make like all these lists, and it's like, I don't think
Okay.
that's a good thing or bad thing. But yeah, I think features is just a new kind of way that you can I don't think anyone's really thinking about that. So please go and check out the features. Even Zoom has new features. I don't know, just
Yeah.
backgrounds and stuff. Could be cool.
Exactly. Exactly. It's all about like going deeper instead of going longer. Sometimes we're adding more and more tools rather than actually learning the tools that we already have and how we can optimize them as best as possible.
Yeah, and you can build loyalty with those companies, which is also something that we're seeing is
Yeah.
brands really wanting to work with their customers and share those opportunities. So I think is really cool as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so I wanted to ask you now for what I call a CEO nugget. Well, this could be like a word of wisdom or piece of advice. It might be something you would tell a client, or if you have to do a time machine, you might tell your younger business self.
Yes, CEO nugget. Um, I think what I would love to just speak on is, so in startup background, you kind of are trying to accumulate a team of different skills, and everyone brings something good to the table, and you try to get those roles pretty established, but pretty soon you figure out that people aren't like super about their role, they're confused about their role. Um, so I really like to ask the question of like, what do you hate doing? So I make sure you're not doing that. And I also try to be really flexible. Like I know that my business, even though it's had this level of success, I always know that someone is kind of, it's an opportunity for someone that they're going to use to have another opportunity. And I think that's a beautiful thing. that I've been able to do. And so I've been able to hire friends, but also family members and also experts and, real expensive experts. And you just need to be really good with like your obvious like budget and financial like I don't know, is a CEO supposed to look at that stuff, right? Um, yeah, I think team is really important. I think really like making sure that you're actively trying to reflect on your leadership skills too, because no one's perfect and we all make mistakes and we can easily beat ourselves up over them as well. And that is not good either. So just be flexible with your team because, like I said, with Uber, like no one liked working for Uber. Um, and what would be the point of having a company that big if the people within the company are not happy? So I like the dynamic that I have and have had. And it's also, like you said, building those relationships and seeing what they do after the fact. It's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always kind of bring up one of the symbols to power and success. Most people think it was the rock, but it really is water. And it's because of it represents flexibility. It represents being permeable, be able to go around things and through things and be able to even move rocks, when it has enough, steam, so to speak, or enough speed, I should say. And I think that's kind of like what it reminds me of, especially during times like this, of being able to be flexible, lean on your team, and but understand, like as you said so well, if you sometimes don't know exactly what you love to do, be able to say what you don't like to do. And I think that's a great place to start. And I think in so many different ways, when we often can't articulate exactly what we want to do or what the next step is, sometimes it helps just knowing what is not the next step, and being able to kind of work backwards from there is a great launching pad to kind of get to where you want to be.
I do that all the time. I'm like, no, we don't do that today. No, that's not today. Sorry, guys. I know we prepped for that for a few weeks, but it's not the time. Like
Mhm.
having that timing is a gift. I think that's a real premonition type of,
Mhm.
yeah, gotta use that tool if you got it.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. That's definitely part of the secret sauce as well, too. If you have it, you could definitely use it. And so I wanted to ask you now my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And we're hoping to have different quote unquote CEOs on the show. So Isabella, what does being a CEO mean to you?
Well, again, I'm like, I want to take forever and speak on this. I think to be a CEO is to be inspirational for the right reasons. It's not just to have accolades or accomplishments or recognitions, unless they are really warranted, right? Like people who deserve things should get them. But I think to be aspirational and inspirational and do good is the the new age CEO. But a CEO really is the person who sets the vision for the company, and his only job is to make sure the company can continue being a company. So you can't disregard the finances and the projections. And, you know, um, in business school, I had a professor who used to say, in business, you pay your invoices as late as possible and you collect them as early as possible. And I thought that was like, just like, it's like, where advice did you get that from? Like, where did that come from? But I don't know. I guess that's what I say. I teach CEO embodiment within my courses and programs. And what that just means, it's like a mantra for women who are afraid. Most of the time, I think we're afraid to be kind of like domineering, um, in a sense of, in the ways that men are more naturally. It's a little bit harder for us because we tend to think about the collective and like the caretaker, and we don't want to be judged for being happy that we're successful, I guess. But you were saying that it's important for us to display that so other people can see. So I think a CEO knows how to do that with a certain like decorum without kind of like putting down other groups or other businesses. I think where that comes from is a lack of business experience. Like whenever I've seen a CEO who kind of is acting in that kind of top of the world, like Joe Rogan type of thing. I kind of think, I don't think it's the business, the level of like respect, right? Of we're all in business together for years and years and years. And I don't know, I think that kind of matters.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that as well too. I think so many times we can lose sight of why we're doing what we're doing. And I think as you talked about, of course, it's important to know your numbers, know all the finances, the data, all of those things definitely have their place, but you can quickly get into a space where you're not aware of, or you're not in alignment with why you even started what you started. And I think to me, like you talked about the human, I mean, the business aspect, I almost feel like that is right in line with that human aspect of business, of having that respect, of understanding of, you know, the team members that are on the team and being in alignment with who they are, not just leading and being a quote unquote boss just to be a boss, or being a CEO just to be a CEO. It's really in the impact that you're making and the dent that you're putting in the universe, but for, I think, you know, good causes as well. So I love that definition just because I think it speaks to a lot of times the things that we can forget as we reach success and kind of go through the journey of life and in business.
Yeah, I just thought of an example, if you don't mind, I share
Go
it.
for it.
But
Go for it.
um, the Office, when Michael Scott says like, "I'm not in the paper business, I'm in the people
People
business,"
business. Yes.
and the CEO of Dunder Mifflin. I'm not like a super Office freak, but like I just watched it a few times. The CEO of Dunder Mifflin, David Wallace, I think in one season, like screwed over Michael. He basically like moved Holly away or something. And I think as a CEO, I don't know what was going on through David Wallace's character's mind, but you know, that's what I think by that, what you were saying, that flexibility of like, people are going to fall in love in the office. People are going to go seek other opportunities. And as a company, again, your only job is to make sure. And if also like you have to change the structure of how your team operates and the values and the policies within that, you got to take the time to do that. Otherwise, you're not going to survive with these more competitive, modern, progressive companies that will, you know, take you out of business or whatever it is. And yeah, it's to acknowledge competition is like a really interesting thing, because it doesn't need to have a negative connotation to it, but it's also not something that you can't pretend doesn't exist. And I'm very aware of when people say competition doesn't exist, because it's like, it clearly does. Economics 101. But you know, that's just my purview of business and my background. So just want to share that example.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you for sharing that. I am an Office freak, so anytime you mention that, I definitely give you 30 more minutes to talk about The Office, because that's one of my favorite shows of all time. So I definitely agree with exactly everything that you said, where sometimes we lose that sight of why we're doing what we're doing, that people aspect, being in the people business. It puts so many things in perspective on what we're doing and how exactly to take those steps, you know, towards reaching whatever that goal might be. So Isabella, truly appreciate that example and that definition. And I appreciate your time even more. What I wanted to do is just pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional you can let our readers and listeners know. And of course, how best they can get a hold of you and find out about all the awesome things you're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This is a great conversation. And we definitely should do Office Part 2 on my
Yes.
show.
Yes.
Yeah, if you'd like to connect with me, the best place to reach me is LinkedIn, actually. Just updated it, got some new connections, and it would be great to just connect with other business owners. And if you're looking for more, you know, I have Instagram, Isabella.Guava, but LinkedIn is my preferred social media right now. I really like what's going on over there.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, to make it even easier, we'll have the links and information in the show notes, and definitely looking forward to part 2 as well too. So I appreciate, you know, you taking some time out and really dropping some knowledge and information, you know, on us and letting us know how we can be better CEOs, entrepreneurs, and business owners. So appreciate you for all you do, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, you too. Bye, Gresham.